Welcome to the sleepy underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. The salt-laden wind caressed my face as I stood at the water's edge, my calloused hands working methodically to repair the fishing nets my father and I used to sustain our living. The rhythm of the waves against the rocky Maine shoreline created a soothing melody that had been the soundtrack of my life for all my 23 years. I am Nico, son of fisherman James Littlesea and grandson of Wabanaki elder Minato. Our family had lived on this coastline for generations, guardians of stories that most considered mere legends. While tourists flocked to our small coastal village for its picturesque views and fresh seafood, they remained blissfully unaware of the deeper connections my ancestors held with the sea. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of amber and lavender. I paused my work, mesmerized by the way the fading light danced across the surface of the tide pools. That's when I first saw her. A figure emerged between the rocks, so gracefully it seemed as if the water itself had taken form. Flowing dark hair cascaded down her shoulders, and her skin. I couldn't be sure in the twilight, but it appeared to shimmer with an iridescent quality that caught what remained of the day's light. Our eyes met across the distance, and something ancient stirred within me. She disappeared beneath the water before I could process what I'd seen. I dropped the nets and rushed to the tide pools, my heart pounding against my ribs. The water revealed nothing but the usual sea life, hermit crabs scuttling about, anemones waving their tentacles in the gentle current. "You saw something in the water." The voice wasn't a question, but a statement. I turned to find my grandfather standing behind me, his weather-beaten face creased with knowing. "I don't know what I saw," I replied, uncertain if I should share the wild thoughts racing through my mind. Grandfather Minato nodded slowly. The Wabanaki have always known the sea holds more secrets than most people are willing to believe. Our ancestors spoke of beings who dwelled beneath the waves, with whom they once shared a profound connection. That night, sleep eluded me. The image of the woman in the tide pools haunted my dreams when I did drift off. I woke before dawn and found myself drawn back to the shore, as if pulled by an invisible thread. The morning mist hung thick over the water as I made my way to the same spot. I sat on a large, flat stone and waited, though for what, I wasn't entirely sure. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning away the mist. Tourists began to populate the beach further down the shore. I was about to leave when the water before me rippled. She emerged slowly, cautiously, revealing herself inch by inch. First, her face, delicate features framed by that same dark hair, now slick against her head. Her eyes were the deepest blue I'd ever seen, like the ocean during a storm. Then her shoulders, bare and glistening. She didn't come fully out of the water, but stayed partially submerged. "You came back," she said, her voice melodic and unlike any I'd heard before. "So did you," I managed to reply, my mouth suddenly dry. She smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through clouds. "I'm Meli." "Nico," I offered. "I know who you are, Nico Littlesea. I've watched you for some time." The revelation should have unsettled me, but instead, I felt a strange sense of comfort. "What are you?" I whispered. Meli moved closer, and that's when I saw it. The shimmer of scales below her waist, iridescent blues and greens catching the sunlight as they merged with the water. "Your people once called us the children of Glooskap and the sea," she said. "Your grandfather knows the old stories." "A mermaid," I breathed, the word feeling both foreign and familiar on my tongue. She nodded. "Though we prefer to be known by our names rather than what we are." For reasons I couldn't explain, I wasn't afraid. Perhaps the blood of my ancestors recognized what my modern mind struggled to accept. "Will you meet me tonight?" she asked. "When the moon is high?" I found myself nodding before I could consider the wisdom of such an arrangement. That evening marked the beginning of what would become the most transformative period of my life. Night after night, I slipped away from the village to meet Meli at our secluded spot along the shore. Sometimes we talked for hours, exchanging stories of our worlds. Other times, we sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Meli taught me about life beneath the waves, vast underwater gardens that bloomed in bioluminescent splendor, the ancient cities of her people carved into deep-sea canyons, and the songs they sang that guided whales on their migrations. In return, I shared with her the wonders of human innovation, our art and music, and our capacity for both destruction and compassion. I brought her books, carefully wrapped in waterproof coverings, which she devoured with an insatiable curiosity. As the weeks passed, my feelings for Meli deepened into something I had never experienced before. It transcended physical attraction, though I couldn't deny the way my heart raced when she smiled or when her hand occasionally brushed against mine. There was a connection between us that felt primordial, as if our souls recognized one another from some distant past. "My mother warned me about falling in love with a human," Meli confessed one night, as we sat side by side on the rocks, her tail occasionally flicking droplets of water that caught the moonlight. My breath caught in my throat. "Is that what's happening?" She turned to face me, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "What else would you call this thing between us that defies the natural order?" I couldn't find words to describe it, so instead I reached out and gently took her hand in mine. Her skin was cool and smooth against my palm. We stayed that way for what felt like hours, connected by that simple touch and the unspoken understanding that we had crossed into territory where few had ventured before. Our idyllic summer came to an abrupt end when the weather began to change. The normally predictable Maine climate turned volatile. Storms brewed with increasing frequency, each more severe than the last. "Something isn't right," Meli said one evening, her expression troubled as she gazed out at the darkening horizon. "The sea is restless." My father and the other fishermen had noticed it too. Their conversations at the harbor were filled with concern about changing currents and marine life behaving strangely. The old-timers muttered about signs they hadn't seen since the Great Storm of '78 that had nearly wiped our village off the map. 3 days later, the sky turned an ominous green-gray. The radio crackled with emergency warnings about a massive storm system barreling up the coast. "It's coming," Grandfather Minato said grimly as we rushed to secure our boat and equipment. "And it's worse than anything I've seen in my lifetime." That night, as evacuation orders were issued and families packed their most precious belongings, I slipped away to our meeting place. The waves were already violent, crashing against the rocks with frightening force. Meli appeared, her normally serene features taut with worry. "You shouldn't be here," she called over the howl of the wind. "It's not safe." "I had to see you," I shouted back. "The village is evacuating inland." She swam closer, fighting against the churning water. "This storm, it's not natural. Something has disturbed the ancient balance between land and sea." A cold dread settled in my stomach. "What do you mean?" "There are powers in the deep that have slumbered for centuries," she explained. "Human activities, the drilling, the pollution, have awakened them. They're angry, Nico." Lightning split the sky, illuminating her face in harsh white light. In that moment, She looked both terrifyingly otherworldly and achingly vulnerable. "Can you stop it?" I asked desperately. She shook her head. "Not alone, but I can help guide your people to safety." Before I could protest, she reached up and pulled something from around her neck, a small shell on a cord of woven seaweed. "Take this. It will allow me to find you, no matter where you go." I slipped it over my head, feeling its strange warmth against my skin. "What are you going to do?" "Gather allies," she replied enigmatically. "Now go. Warn your village. The evacuation routes they've planned won't be safe. The inland rivers will flood. You must lead them to higher ground, to the old Wabanaki trails your grandfather knows." I hesitated, torn between my duty to my community and my fear for her safety. "Go," she insisted, giving me a gentle push toward shore. "I'll find you when it's over." The following hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Convincing my father and the village council to alter their evacuation plans wasn't easy, but Grandfather Minato's support lent credibility to my seemingly wild claims about the coming flood paths. As we led the villagers up into the foothills along ancient trails that hadn't been used in generations, I kept glancing back at the ocean. The storm had intensified, transforming the once welcoming sea into a monstrous force that devoured the coastline. Then I saw them, shapes moving through the water, coordinated and purposeful. Dolphins herded struggling fishing boats to safer channels. Seals guided stranded beachgoers to higher ground. And occasionally, I caught glimpses of forms that were undeniably human from the waist up, directing this symphony of rescue. "The children of Glooskap," Grandfather Minato murmured beside me, his eyes wide with wonder. The stories were true. For 3 days, the storm raged with apocalyptic fury. We watched from our mountain refuge, as our village was partly swallowed by the sea. Yet miraculously, not a single life was lost, neither human nor animal. When the waters finally receded and we were able to return to assess the damage, I immediately made my way to our meeting place. The landscape had been dramatically altered. Familiar rocks had been swept away, new ones deposited in their place. I waited all day, but Meli didn't come. Night fell, and still, I waited, clutching the shell pendant she had given me. As the moon rose, casting silver light across the transformed shoreline, I began to lose hope. In desperation, I waded into the tide pools, calling her name. My foot struck something hard in the sand. Reaching down through the shallow water, my fingers closed around a smooth, round object. I lifted it out of the water, a pearl unlike any I had ever seen. It was large, perfectly round, and seemed to contain all the colors of the sea within its depths. As I held it in my palm, a warm sensation spread up my arm and through my body. The shell pendant around my neck grew hot, and I heard Meli's voice as clearly as if she stood beside me. "The ocean will always remember you, just as I will." Understanding dawned with both joy and sorrow. The pearl was her gift to me, a piece of her world that I could keep in mine. But it was also her goodbye. I learned later from Grandfather Minato that according to the old stories, merfolk could only interact with the human world for limited periods before they had to return to the deep. Their help during the storm had depleted their ability to cross between realms. It might be generations before they could return. Years have passed since that summer. Our village was rebuilt, stronger, and with a renewed respect for the sea that both gives and takes. I became the keeper of the stories, teaching the young ones about our connection to the ocean and its mysterious inhabitants. Some nights, when the moon is full and the tide is high, I return to our meeting place with the pearl in my hand. I tell myself it's to honor her memory, but in my heart, I hold on to the hope that someday she might return. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear fragments of the song floating across the water, a melody both foreign and familiar that speaks of love that transcends the boundaries between land and sea. Meli taught me the most important lesson of all, that love, in its purest form, can bridge even the deepest divides. And in that knowledge, I find a sense of peace as vast and eternal as the ocean itself. As I stand here now, watching the waves caress the shore, I understand that some gifts are meant to transform us rather than simply belong to us. Meli's gift wasn't just the pearl I still carry. It was the awakening of my heart to possibilities beyond the visible world. And so I wait, patient as the tide, knowing that love, like the sea, follows cycles beyond our understanding. Until then, I cherish the pearl, the stories, and the memory of iridescent skin shimmering in the moonlight. For the ocean remembers, and so do I. 5 winters had passed since the great storm. The village had rebuilt itself, stronger than before, with new structures designed to withstand the sea's fury. As the appointed keeper of stories, I divided my time between helping my father with the fishing business and teaching the village children about our connection to the ocean. The pearl Meli had left me never left my possession. Some days, I wore it on a cord around my neck, hidden beneath my clothes where it rested cool against my skin. On other days, when I needed to feel closer to her, I kept it in my pocket, my fingers absently tracing its perfect roundness as I went about my daily tasks. Tonight marked the 5th anniversary of the storm. The moon hung full and heavy over the water, casting a silvery path across the waves that seemed to beckon me forward. I made my way down to our meeting place, the rocky outcropping now weathered differently by the storm, but still recognizable to those who knew where to look. I sat on the largest boulder, the pearl cupped in my palm, glowing with an inner light that seemed to intensify near the water. The tide pools around me reflected the moonlight, their surfaces occasionally disturbed by the movement of tiny creatures going about their nightly business. "I still miss you," I whispered to the sea, my words carried away by the salt-laden breeze. The water before me rippled slightly, though there was no wind to disturb it. I leaned forward, my heart quickening as I had so many times before, when I thought I'd glimpsed something in the waves. Usually, it turned out to be nothing more than wishful thinking, a trick of light on water. But tonight was different. A soft blue glow emanated from beneath the surface, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The pearl in my hand grew warm, vibrating with an energy that traveled up my arm and spread throughout my body. Meli? Her name escaped my lips as a prayer. The glow intensified, coalescing into a distinct shape. Not the form I remembered, but something else. A small creature that looked like a fusion of seahorse and dragon, no larger than my forearm. It broke the surface, water cascading off its luminescent scales as it regarded me with eyes that held ancient wisdom. Nico Littlesea. The voice wasn't audible, but seemed to form directly in my mind. Keeper of the Pearl, guardian of stories. I found myself nodding, unable to form words as I stared at the magical being before me. "I am Lumina, messenger of the deep realms. I come with tidings from she whom you seek." My heart leaped into my throat. "Meli, she's alive?" The creature, Lumina, bobbed in what appeared to be affirmation. "She exists in the eternal waters of the deep realm, where time flows differently than in your world. What has been 5 cycles of seasons for you has been but a moment for her." "Can I see her?" I asked, leaning closer to the water's edge, the pearl clutched tightly in my hand. Lumina's glow dimmed slightly. The boundaries between our worlds remain strong, reinforced after the great healing that followed the storm. But there is a way if you are willing. "Anything," I said without hesitation. "On the night when the moon is newest, when darkness covers the sea completely, bring the pearl to the place where the eastern cliffs meet the deep water. Dive into the sea with the pearl against your heart, and you will find a passage. A passage to Meli? A passage to possibility, Lumina corrected gently. The rest depends on forces beyond my knowledge. But know this, she remembers as you do. The bond you share transcends the barriers between land and sea. Before I could ask more questions, Lumina dove beneath the surface, the blue glow fading until only the regular moonlight remained dancing on the waves. I sat motionless for several minutes, wondering if I had imagined the entire encounter. But the pearl in my hand still hummed with energy, and my heart beat with a renewed purpose I hadn't felt in years. The new moon was 3 weeks away. I spent the intervening time preparing, though for what exactly I wasn't sure. I studied my grandfather's ancient maps of the coastline, identifying the eastern cliffs Lumina had mentioned. The location was remote, accessible only by a treacherous path that wound down from the highlands or by boat around the jutting peninsula. "You seem different lately," my father remarked one evening as we mended nets together on the dock. "More like your old self." I hadn't realized how much I had changed in the years since losing Meli, how much of myself I had tucked away like a precious object, too fragile for daily use. "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm waking up from a long sleep." My father nodded, his weathered hands never pausing in their work. "Your grandfather would say that's the call of the ancestors. When they have something important to show us, they wake our sleeping spirits." If only he knew how literal that call had been. I visited Grandfather Minato's grave on the hillside overlooking the sea. Since his passing 2 winters ago, I often came here seeking guidance, imagining what wisdom he might offer for my current dilemmas. "I don't know what awaits me," I said to the wind that rustled through the sweet grass surrounding his stone marker. "But I have to go. She's part of me now, in a way I can't explain." The wind seemed to whisper back, carrying the scent of salt and something else. Something ancient, and knowing that reminded me of the stories he used to tell by the firelight. The night of the new moon arrived with surprising swiftness. I told my father I was taking our smaller boat to check some traps in the southern bay, a half-truth that sat uncomfortably in my stomach. But how could I explain where I was going, what I was hoping to find? The night was velvet dark as I navigated around the peninsula, guided only by stars and my intimate knowledge of the coastline. The eastern cliffs loomed like sentinels against the night sky, their faces black and formidable in the absence of moonlight. I anchored the boat in a small cove and stripped down to my swimming shorts. The water would be frigidly cold, but I had grown up swimming in these waters in all seasons. After tying the pearl securely around my neck, I dove into the darkness. The shock of cold momentarily robbed me of breath, but I forced myself to swim deeper, following the cliff face down to where it met the seafloor. The pearl glowed against my chest, providing just enough light to navigate by. Time seemed to lose meaning as I swam. My lungs burned, but something pushed me onward, deeper than I had ever gone before. Just as my body screamed for air, I saw it. A narrow fissure in the rock face, emanating the same blue light I had seen when Lumina appeared. With the last of my strength, I propelled myself toward the opening. As I passed through the fissure, everything changed. The water around me warmed to a pleasant temperature. The pressure that should have crushed my chest at this depth disappeared. Most surprisingly, I found I could breathe. I drew in a tentative breath, expecting my lungs to fill with seawater. Instead, they filled with something that felt like air, but denser, richer, carrying scents of exotic plants and minerals I couldn't identify. I floated in wonder, attempting to comprehend what was happening to me. The narrow fissure opened into a vast underwater cavern, illuminated by bioluminescent algae that clung to the walls and ceiling. The floor of the cavern sloped upward, eventually breaking the water's surface to form a small beach of glittering sand. I swam toward it, marveling at how easily I moved through the water now. As I emerged onto the beach, I expected to feel the familiar drag of water leaving my clothes, the heaviness of gravity reclaiming me. Instead, I felt light, almost buoyant, as if the boundary between water and air had become permeable somehow. "The pearl adapts you to our realm," a melodic voice explained from behind me. I turned so quickly that I nearly lost my balance. There she stood in the shallows, exactly as I remembered, yet somehow more vibrant, more real than the image I had carried in my heart for 5 long years. Her dark hair flowed around her shoulders, adorned with small shells and crystals that caught the blue light. Her eyes, deep as the ocean during a storm, regarded me with a mixture of joy and caution. "Meli," I breathed, afraid that speaking too loudly might shatter this dream. She smiled, and just like before, it was like watching the sun break through clouds. "You came?" "I told you I would find you," I said, taking a step toward her, then hesitating. "If you wanted to be found." She moved closer, and I saw that instead of the tail I remembered, she had legs that carried her gracefully through the shallow water. My confusion must have shown on my face. "We can adapt our form," she explained, glancing down at herself. "In this place between realms, such transitions are easier." She reached the shore and stood before me, close enough to touch. "Just as you can now breathe water, I can walk on land, here at least." I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When my fingers finally made contact with her cheek, the sensation was electric. Her skin was cool and smooth, just as I remembered. But there was also a subtle current that passed between us, as if our very atoms recognized one another. "I've missed you," I said simply, unable to articulate the depth of longing that had filled my days since we parted. "And I you," she replied, leaning slightly into my touch. Time passes differently in the deep realm, but the feeling of absence is the same. She took my hand and led me away from the shore, deeper into the cavern. As we walked, the bioluminescent light followed us, illuminating our path. The cavern opened into a series of connected chambers, each more beautiful than the last. Living sculptures of coral grew from the floors and walls, their forms suggesting towers and arches that reminded me of ancient cities half-remembered from dreams. "Welcome to Luminara," Meli said, her voice filled with pride. "One of the gateway cities between the surface world and the deep realm. Few humans have ever seen it." "It's incredible," I murmured, taking in the ethereal beauty around us. Small creatures that resembled flying fish with butterfly wings darted through the air, leaving trails of sparkling light. Music drifted from somewhere deeper in the city, notes that seemed to vibrate at a frequency that made my very bones resonate. As we walked through what appeared to be a central plaza, other beings emerged from doorways and alcoves. Some looked similar to Meli, human from the waist up with iridescent tails instead of legs. Others were more alien, beings with multiple limbs or translucent skin that revealed the flow of colorful fluids beneath. They regarded me with curiosity rather than hostility, some nodding in greeting, others maintaining a respectful distance. "They know who you are," Meli explained. "The human who helped save his village during the Great Storm, the one who carries the Pearl of Memory." "I didn't do anything special," I protested. "You and your people saved us." Meli squeezed my hand. "You trusted the unbelievable. You convinced your people to take a path they would have otherwise rejected. That kind of bridge building between our worlds is rare and precious." We came to a small dwelling carved into the living coral. Inside, it was surprisingly cozy, furnished with items that appeared to be crafted from various sea materials. Chairs made from shaped coral, surfaces of polished mother of pearl, soft cushions that might have been fashioned from some kind of sea vegetation. "My home," Meli said with a hint of shyness. "At least while I'm in Luminara." "It's beautiful," I said, noticing small details that spoke volumes about her. Shelves lined with objects she must have collected. Patterns carved into the walls that reminded me of the stories she used to tell me about her people's history. "Nico," she said, her expression growing serious. "There are things you need to know about why I've brought you here." She gestured for me to sit on one of the coral chairs, which was unexpectedly comfortable. Settling herself across from me, she took a deep breath. "The balance between our worlds is failing," she began. "The great storm was just the beginning, a warning of what might come if the ancient accords between land and sea continue to erode." "What accords?" I asked, leaning forward. "Long ago, your ancestors and mine made promises to one another. The humans would respect the sea and its inhabitants, taking only what they needed and protecting the waters from harm. In return, my people would guard the coasts from the worst of the sea's fury and ensure the waters remained bountiful. I thought of my fishing village, of how we'd always had successful seasons, even when neighboring communities struggled. How our storms, while fierce, rarely took lives. I had attributed it to luck and the wisdom of our elders in reading weather patterns. Now I understood there had been more at work. These promises have been forgotten by most humans," Meli continued. "The seas suffer from their neglect and exploitation. The deep powers that awakened during the storm have not returned to their slumber. They stir, growing more restless with each passing season." "And if they fully awaken?" I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. "The storm that nearly destroyed your village would seem gentle in comparison," she said gravely. "Entire coastlines could be lost, and my people cannot hold back such fury alone." The weight of her words settled over me like a physical thing. "What can I do? I'm just one person." Meli's expression softened. "You're more than that. You're a bridge, Nico. The pearl you carry is proof of that. It responds to you in a way it shouldn't for a human, and you've already shown you can breathe our waters, walk in our realm." She reached out, taking both my hands in hers. "The Council of the Deep Realms believes there might be a way to renew the ancient accords, to remind humans and merfolk alike of the bonds we once shared. But it requires someone who can move between worlds, someone who carries both human wisdom and merfolk magic." "Me," I said, the realization dawning slowly. "Us," she corrected, her eyes searching mine. "Together, if you're willing." The proposition hung between us, monumental in its implications. I thought of my father, of our village, of the life I had built there. Could I leave it all behind? As if reading my thoughts, Meli squeezed my hands. "I'm not asking you to abandon your world, Nico. I'm asking you to help bridge it with mine." I looked down at our intertwined fingers, her skin with its subtle sheen, mine tanned and calloused from years of working with nets and ropes. Different, yet somehow perfectly fitted together. "How would it work?" I finally asked. Relief flooded her features. "The pearl you carry is one of 7 ancient artifacts created when the original accords were struck. Together, they form a key that can open permanent pathways between our realms, stable passages that would allow regular contact and collaboration." "And the other 6? "3 are held by the Deep Council. 2 were lost during the age of human expansion and warfare, hidden away for safekeeping. And 1..." She hesitated. "1 is said to be guarded by the Wabanaki people. Your people." My mind raced back to the stories my grandfather had told me, of sacred objects passed down through generations. Could one of them be what Meli described? "The shell necklace," I murmured, remembering an ornate creation of wampum and carved shells that had been buried with my grandfather. He always said it was more than just decoration, that it helped our people speak with the spirits of the sea. Meli nodded eagerly. That could be it. We would need to retrieve it, along with the other missing artifacts. You're talking about a quest, I said, the enormity of the task beginning to sink in. A journey, she corrected gently. One that would take us to the deepest trenches of the ocean, and perhaps to places in your world I've never seen. And at the end of this journey, if we succeed? Her eyes lit up with hope. The barriers between our worlds would thin, not disappear. Both realms need their separation to maintain their unique magic, but become permeable enough to allow passage for those with the proper permission. Our people could collaborate openly again. The ancient powers would be appeased by the renewal of the accords. She hesitated, then added softly, and we would no longer be separated by the boundaries of water and air. The implication sent a wave of emotion through me so powerful, I had to close my eyes for a moment to steady myself. To be with Meli, not just for stolen moments in hidden realms, but as a regular part of my life. It was more than I had dared to hope for since she disappeared after the storm. When do we start? I asked, opening my eyes to find her smiling at me with such tenderness it made my heart ache. Tomorrow, she said. Tonight is for remembering. She stood and held out her hand to me. I took it without hesitation and followed her from the dwelling, back through the glowing city to a different chamber I hadn't seen before. This one was smaller and more intimate, with a ceiling that seemed to ripple like the surface of water viewed from below. In the center of the chamber was a pool that glowed with the same blue light I had seen emanating from Lumina. Meli led me to its edge and knelt, indicating I should do the same. This is the Pool of Echoes, she explained. It allows us to revisit memories with perfect clarity, to experience them again as if they were happening for the first time. She guided my hand to the surface of the pool, the pearl still hanging from its cord around my neck. As our fingers broke the surface together, the water began to swirl, colors forming and reforming until an image appeared. The two of us sitting side by side on the rocks of the Maine shoreline. The first night we'd truly spoken, when she'd told me her name. The memory was so vivid I could feel the cool night air on my skin, smell the salt of the sea, and hear the exact cadence of our conversation. Meli's hand tightened around mine as we both experienced the moment anew. The uncertainty, the wonder, the first stirrings of a connection neither of us had fully understood at the time. The pool shifted, showing us another memory, teaching Meli about human music, her delight when I brought a small waterproof radio to our meeting place and showed her how to tune it to different stations. I watched her face in the memory, the way her eyes widened with each new sound, and how she moved to the rhythm with natural grace. Memory after memory played out on the surface of the pool, some from my perspective, others from hers. I saw myself through her eyes, a figure silhouetted against the sunset, looking out to sea with a longing she recognized because it mirrored her own. I felt her anxiety each time she approached the surface, and her joy when she saw me waiting. Hours seemed to pass as we knelt there, reliving the summer that had changed both our lives. When the final memory faded, our painful goodbye before the storm, I found my cheeks were wet with tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. Meli reached up and gently brushed them away, her touch achingly tender. "I wanted you to see," she whispered, "to understand that what we shared wasn't just a dream or a legend. It was real as what we feel now." "I never doubted that," I said, covering her hand with mine as it rested against my cheek. "Not for a moment." The air between us seemed to vibrate with unspoken words, with 5 years of longing finally given the chance for expression. I leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, She moved to meet me halfway. Our lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. Soft at first, hesitant with the newness of it, then deeper as years of separation melted away. Her skin emanated that subtle current I had noticed earlier, a gentle electricity that heightened every sensation. When we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, the world around us seemed to have changed. Colors more vibrant, sounds more clear, as if the kiss had awakened some dormant sense that allowed me to perceive the magic of this place more fully. "I've waited 5 years to do that," I admitted with a small laugh. "I would have waited 50, she replied, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of the pool. "Some bonds transcend time." She stood, pulling me to my feet alongside her. "Come," she said. "There's one more place I want to show you before the night ends." We left the Chamber of Echoes, winding through passages that sloped gently upward. The bioluminescent light grew dimmer as we ascended, replaced gradually by a different kind of illumination that I couldn't immediately identify. Finally, we emerged into a chamber unlike any of the others. The ceiling was transparent, revealing the night ocean above us, mysteriously illuminated despite the absence of moonlight. Schools of fish swam overhead, their silver bellies catching the light. Occasionally, larger shapes moved through the water, the graceful forms of manta rays, the sleek bodies of dolphins. But most breathtaking of all was the view of stars, visible through the water, with a clarity I had never experienced from the land. They seemed closer somehow, their light undistorted by the atmosphere, pulsing with colors my human eyes had never detected before. "The celestial chamber," Meli said softly. "One of the few places where the 3 realms meet: sea, land, and sky." In the center of the chamber was a simple platform of mother of pearl, large enough for 2 people to recline side by side. Meli led me to it, and we lay down together, gazing up at the underwater night sky. "My people believe that the stars are the souls of those who have loved across boundaries," she murmured, her head resting against my shoulder. "Those who dared to build bridges between worlds that were meant to remain separate." "And what happened to them?" I asked, absently stroking her hair, still marveling at how naturally we fit together despite our different worlds. "They were transformed," she said. "Neither fully of one realm nor the other, but something new entirely. Beings of pure light that could travel between all worlds freely." I thought about the journey ahead of us, the artifacts we needed to find, the ancient accords we hoped to renew. "Do you think that's possible? To belong to multiple worlds without losing yourself?" She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me with eyes that reflected the starlight filtering through the water above. "I think we're already proving that it is." As she lowered her lips to mine once more, I felt the truth of her words resonating through me. In this moment, suspended between ocean and sky, between human and merfolk, I was more fully myself than I had ever been before. Tomorrow would bring challenges, dangers, and the beginning of a quest with no guaranteed outcome. But tonight, beneath an ocean of stars, I found perfect peace in the knowledge that whatever awaited us, we would face it together. 2 beings from different worlds who had somehow created a world of their own in the space between. The pearl against my chest pulsed warmly, as if affirming this realization. And as Meli curled against me, her breath soft against my neck, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found my true home. Not in the fishing village where I was born, not in the magical underwater city of Luminara, but here, in the arms of the woman who had taught me that love could indeed bridge the deepest divides. Dawn arrived differently in the underwater realm, not with the dramatic appearance of the sun, but with a gradual brightening of the water above us, schools of fish changing their swimming patterns as they welcomed the new day. I woke to find Meli already alert, watching me with a gentle smile. We had stayed in the celestial chamber all night, talking for hours before finally drifting to sleep in one another's arms. "Did you rest well?" she asked, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "Better than I have in 5 years," I replied honestly. She leaned down to place a quick kiss on my lips before rising gracefully to her feet. "We should prepare. The council will be waiting for us." As we made our way back through the chambers of Luminara, I noticed subtle changes in the city. The bioluminescent lights pulsed with more energy, and more of the merpeople were visible, going about what appeared to be their daily activities. Some nodded respectfully as we passed. Others watched with undisguised curiosity. "They're not used to seeing humans here," Meli explained, noticing my awareness of their attention. "Especially not humans who can breathe water and move so comfortably in our realm." "Am I the first?" I asked, wondering how many others might have made this journey before me. "The first in several generations," she replied. "There have been others throughout history, usually those with mixed heritage, descendants of rare unions between our peoples." The implication hung between us, unspoken but acknowledged in the slight flush that colored her cheeks. I squeezed her hand reassuringly, silently communicating that I understood the significance of what she was sharing. We entered a vast chamber that appeared to be carved from a single enormous piece of abalone shell, its walls shimmering with iridescent blues and greens. At the center was a circular table formed from coral, around which sat 7 figures of diverse appearance, all clearly merfolk, but with variations that suggested different regions, or perhaps even subspecies. Lumina, the small dragon-like creature who had delivered Meli's message, hovered near the shoulder of an elderly merwoman, whose silver hair was adorned with strands of pearl and coral. Her tail was a magnificent collage of purples and blues, and her bearing suggested authority. "Welcome, Nico Littlesea," she said, her voice carrying the same melodic quality as Meli's, but deeper, more resonant. "I am Elder Nerissa, head of the Council of the Deep Realms." I bowed slightly, instinctively showing respect. "Thank you for allowing me into your world. It is you who honors us with your courage," another council member said. A merman with features that reminded me of Pacific Islanders, his powerful tail a constellation of golden scales. Few surface dwellers would dare such a journey. Meli explained the situation, I said, looking around at each of their faces. "If there's anything I can do to help restore the balance between our worlds, I want to try." Elder Nerissa nodded approvingly. "The human speaks with sincerity," she said to the others, before returning her attention to me. "The task before you is not simple, Nico Littlesea. The 7 artifacts must be gathered and brought to the Temple of Convergence during the celestial alignment that occurs once every 50 years. This alignment is 6 weeks from now." 6 weeks to find 4 missing artifacts, I repeated, the timeline sinking in. "And we don't know exactly where they are." "We have clues," offered a younger council member, a merman with striking violet eyes and a scientific demeanor. He gestured to a series of glowing symbols that appeared in the water above the table. "The artifacts leave traces of their distinctive energy in the currents. We have narrowed down the general locations." The symbols resolved into a map, part ocean chart, part land mass. Different areas glowed with varying intensities. "One lies in waters near your homeland," Elder Nerissa explained, indicating the coast of Maine. "The shell necklace you mentioned, if it is indeed what we seek. Another appears to be somewhere in these waters." She pointed to an area in the South Pacific. "The third signature is faint but detectable in the Mediterranean Sea," continued the violet-eyed merman. "And the fourth—" He hesitated, exchanging glances with Elder Nerissa. "The fourth presents our greatest challenge," she continued. "It appears to be in the possession of those who would use its power for their own gain." "Humans?" I asked, though something in her tone suggested otherwise. "The abyssal ones," Meli said softly beside me. Merfolk who rejected the ancient accords, who believe that humans should be driven from the coasts entirely and the seas reclaimed by our kind alone. I felt a chill despite the comfortable temperature of the chamber. And they have one of the artifacts? Elder Nerissa nodded gravely. The obsidian trident, the most powerful of the 7. With it, they can influence ocean currents, stir storms, call to the deep creatures that most surface dwellers believe are mere legends. The recent increase in unexplained maritime disasters, the violet-eyed merman added. Ships lost in calm seas, sudden rogue waves. We believe these are their work, testing the trident's powers. The magnitude of what we faced settled over me like a weight. This wasn't just about finding a way for Meli and me to be together. It was about preventing what could amount to a war between land and sea, with devastating consequences for both realms. Where are they based? I asked, studying the map for any indication. The Abyssal Trench, replied Elder Nerissa, indicating a deep ocean feature far from any coastline. Their stronghold lies at a depth that would crush an ordinary human. Even with the Pearl's protection, approaching would be extremely dangerous. I took a deep breath, centering myself. So we find the other 3 artifacts first, then figure out how to deal with the abyssal ones. Meli's hand found mine, her grip firm and reassuring. We'll need help, she said, addressing the council. Guides for the different ocean territories, information on the exact nature of each artifact. Elder Nerissa inclined her head. You shall have all the assistance we can provide. Lumina will accompany you, serving as both guide and messenger. The small dragon-like creature performed what appeared to be a mid-water bow, her luminescent scales rippling with the movement. And you will need this, the elder continued, removing a bracelet from her wrist. It was crafted from an unfamiliar metal that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. This will allow you to call for aid if you find yourself in peril beyond your ability to manage. She handed it to Meli, who slipped it onto her arm with reverence. We are honored by your trust, Elder. When do we leave? I asked, already mentally preparing for what lay ahead. Today, Elder Nerissa replied. The celestial alignment approaches, and time moves differently between our realms. What might feel like days to you could be weeks in the surface world. The realization hit me hard. My father would be worried if I didn't return soon. I had told him I was checking traps, an absence of hours at most. I need to return to my village first, I said, to explain my absence, to gather what might be useful for our journey. The council members exchanged glances, communicating silently in a way I couldn't interpret. Finally, Elder Nerissa spoke. Meli will accompany you to the surface. With the Pearl's power, she can maintain human form for several hours before needing to return to water. This will be good practice for the journey ahead, as you both learn to navigate one another's realms. Joy surged through me at the thought of showing Meli my world, introducing her to my father, letting her experience the life I had lived in her absence. But nervousness followed quickly. How would my village react to her? Would they accept her, or would they see her as something to fear? As if sensing my concerns, Elder Nerissa added, Wisdom suggests discretion, Nico Littlesea. Not all humans are ready to accept the existence of the merfolk. Choose carefully whom you trust with our secret. I nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility being placed on me. I'll be careful. The meeting concluded with formal blessings from each council member, and rituals of protection spoken in a language I didn't understand, but somehow felt resonating within me. The pearl around my neck grew warm with each blessing, absorbing the magic being bestowed. As we left the council chamber, Meli led me to what appeared to be a preparation area, where various items were being gathered for our journey. Waterproof bags containing tools and maps, containers of what she described as concentrated nutrients that would sustain us through long underwater passages. Are you afraid? she asked quietly as we watched the preparations. I considered the question honestly. Yes, I admitted, but not enough to turn back. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the same determination I felt. That's why the pearl chose you. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to move forward despite it. I pulled her close, still marveling at how perfectly she fit against me. As long as we're together, I can face whatever comes. She rested her head against my chest, over my heart. Together, she echoed. Always. The word hung between us like a promise, one that would be tested by the perils ahead, by the barriers between our worlds, by forces that would rather keep us apart. But in that moment, with the currents of magic swirling around us, and the memory of stars seen through ocean water still fresh in my mind, always felt not just possible, but inevitable. And as we prepared to return to the surface world, to begin a quest that would determine the fate of both our peoples, I found myself thinking of something my grandfather once told me. The most powerful magic in all the realms is the magic of a heart that refuses to be limited by the boundaries others have drawn. Looking at Meli, this extraordinary being who had crossed the divide between sea and land to find me again, I knew with absolute certainty that we carried that magic with us, and it would be enough to overcome whatever challenges awaited. For love, like the ocean itself, knows no true boundaries. It simply finds a way to flow where it is meant to be.